Hello guys, today we're going to see the post-launch update of the Arcs or Stormweaver. I have been updating the build on the run and I've been posting some videos for you to check the setup, but today we're going to see the post-campaign configuration that I'm using after testing too many things. This is what's working for me and there is still a lot to do, but this doesn't mean that's the best setup. As you may already know, PoE is quite complex and there are many different combinations. So if you have a suggestion, let me know in the comments, so I'm very interested to see and try other things too. So let's start it. First, let's start with an abstract about the build, okay? So inflicting shocks was the main issue that I had to solve. GGG changed how applying some ailments work in PoE 2 compared to PoE 1. Now you have a chance to apply a shock based on the damage that you deal to the enemy mob. I insist that this is very different to how it worked in PoE 1, and we didn't know beforehand how much that will change or how much damage you will need based on the threshold on the enemy mob. We found out after the game launch that the threshold is not low and you definitely need some investment in damage. You have to have your damage quite high. You can use one utility gem like I had thought before to apply the shock with a low damage skill without investing into that secondary skill to have more damage, okay? So this changed a lot of the main plan that I have for the build. So it doesn't matter much if you have all increased shock chance in the tree. If you aren't hitting it hard enough, then you won't shock the enemy, and this is very important for a shock based build, okay? This led me to think that the build is more like an endgame setup than a league starter, okay? So in the future, I can see leveling up as something else and then respecting to this as we do with many builds in PoE 1. Said that the huge multiplier that we cannot miss is Archmage, okay? I know that the mana cost will ramp up, but this is necessary for the same reasons that I just mentioned. We need the damage to apply the shocks, and this changes a lot. Based on how conversion works now in PoE 2, base level Archmage is already boosting your damage for 70%, okay? If you deal 100 damage with Archmage, you are going to deal 170, and that gets then more amplified with your shocks. And since we're applying both of shocks, Archmage is mandatory for a build. The damage that the Archmage provides is massive and help us to deliver the shocks more consistently. I'm emphasizing this because the build took a major turnaround once I started using it. Even with a 900 mana pool, if you run shock on a build that's based on shock, then we are effed. Okay, so I want to have that clear because you could have a very different experience if you don't have enough damage, which I didn't have when I started the campaign. Okay, I was barely shocking the enemies and was having a so-so time. Once I spec'd into Archmage, everything changed. Okay, and now since I have made some extra progress, the build feels really good. So okay, now let's talk about the gem setup, okay? So first I'm going to start with the main skill, that is Arc. Arc is the skill that we're going to be casting all the time while mapping and while bossing too. This is our main way to deliver the shocks, since it deals so much damage, and the more chains you have, the more hit damage we'll have, and this makes easier for the shock to be applied. These are the supports I'm using. This is Lighting Mastery, Control Destruction, we are not going for crits yet, and Arcane Tempo for more attack cast speed, so we can have more DPS. As you can see, the DPS changes a lot. Then we're using the Orb Storm with the Exposure, so we are applying 2 Orb of the Storm, so we can apply the Exposure. I don't have enough I don't have enough decks. I had here the ones that increase the exposure effect, which is pretty good, but in my current setup I can use it. Then we have the Lightning Warp, which could be combined with the Lightning Ball to apply some shock too, since it leaves this shock ground. But I'm mostly using Lightning Warp to call the enemies. Then we have the Curse setup, which I'm using the Persistence to have more skill effect duration. So the curse lasts more on the enemies, so I have to apply less often. And then have the life tap, so I don't have to pay mana to apply the curse, okay? Then for the auras, as said before, we are using Archmage and we're using Cast on Shock with Lightning Conduit, okay? So once we start shocking the enemies, Lightning Conduit will proc, and it has some damage, extra damage here, and the links would be for more damage for the Lightning Conduit. more multipliers for it. And we have the increased energy, so we can proc more easily the cast and shock. For the Archmage, I'm using Clarity, but that's because I have some extra spirits. If you don't have, that's fine too. And the Archmage is what is giving us a lot of damage, as we already mentioned. To have both of yours setups, you need more spirits in your gear. I'm getting it from the chest and from the amulet. You need 60 extra spirits summed up together from the amulet and the chest. You can have, for example, 60 spirits from your chest, and then you won't need anything from the spirit. And if you can get 10 extra spirits from both of them, that's pretty good, so you can use the Clarity. Then we are using the Mana Tempest because this is also a huge multiplier. As you can see, this is like Archmage actually. 74% as extra lightning damage. This is summed up together. This is not a different multiplier. And then we're using ball lightning just to apply the shocking ground if needed. So the combo is as the follows. We're going to first apply the exposure through the orb of storms. Okay. Then we're going to apply the curse, then the mana storm, and then we're going to arc the enemy. And basically that's it. We're going to be applying shocks on the enemy from both sources, the orb of storm and the arc itself. And once the cast and shock energy pulls up, the lightning conduit will pop up, and the enemy will receive a lot of damage from the lightning conduit and all the arc damage that we are dealing before that. Okay, so that's the main gameplay for big enemies, for example, for rares in your maps, and especially for unique enemies from bosses and such. We want to apply the combo multiple times and get the enemy down through this method. Okay, so now let's see the gear. First of all, I'm aiming for armor and ES hybrid bases. I'm trying to build a more tanky approach for the build instead of a glass cannon that can take the enemies from the distance, so you are safe by doing that. I'm actually building a build that can take some damage. It's not a warrior, okay, but it can take some damage and allow you to go back and kill the enemies. So we are using the armor for the fist damage, then we are using the block for all kinds of hits that includes the attacks and spells. Then we have the Ele Recoup from the Ascendancy, and then of course we have the elemental resistances for the Ele Res, for the Ele damage. Those are our main defense layers for the build, which I think feels pretty good, but I don't know how it's going to feel for more higher level enemies. All the gear follows the same pattern. We are going to have life, we want mana, and we want as much as defenses as we can get. And if we can grab the gear with some chaos res or whatever else, that's a plus. So as you can see, I have all the armor and shield bases, armor and shield, armor and shield. And we're getting the life and mana, life and mana, life and mana. Here we have life, here we have mana. I have to still change the helmet by the way. And I have here we need the spirit, so we grab whatever we can. And the same for the amulet. We have life, mana, and some spirit. So now, for example, I have almost 1200 armor, which reduces the physical damage reduction for almost 30% from the incoming physical damage that we take. Then we have the block from the shield. This is important to have the increased block chance, otherwise we will have 25, that's the base chance. Some have 25, some 26. So if you get a shield with increased block chance, you will have that chance improved, which is massive for more defenses. As I said, I have 40%, and if we get some of the nodes in the tree in the future, once we level up more, I'm level 72, we will have more block chance. Then for the weapon, we always want to have a wand that have level to all lightning spells. It needs to have that because same as PoE 1, the spells scale based on the level of gem. So for example, as you can see, my arc is still level 14 as base level, but I have 4 extra level from global modifiers that's coming from the wand and the ring, and also have an extra level from the support master. So you need to have the level of all lightning spells, that's mandatory, there's no negotiable stat. Then we want to have the extra as lightning. Here I have as fire, which is fine, but lightning is much better because it will increase the base chance for the shock appliance. Then we want to have a high spell damage. This really needs an update because this is not even spell-based spell damage. This is the hybrid with mana. Then we have lightning damage, which is fine, but getting, for example, 100 spell damage is much better. Then I started using this ring, which gives us, which is pretty good for the build itself, but it gives us a +1 level to all lightning skills. It gives us a chance to shock, a lot of mana, base mana, and some elemental resistances, which I think that at least one is pretty good. This is around 7 exalts, so it's kind of pricey. I still need to change my ring and my helmet, as I said, to have more defenses, life, and mana as the other parts of the gear. And one thing that I want to also add in the build is chaos damage, because there are a lot of hits of, for example, these serpents in the temple that deals chaos damage, and they are very dangerous, and we cannot afford to die in maps in PoE2. So I'm adding some of the chaos damage from the shield. As you can see here, we have 18, and I'm planning on getting an amethyst ring for more chaos resistance. So if you have some at least, it will improve a lot, and we want to have the elemental resistance capped, of course, and I'm planning to getting that through the shield and through the helmet. Also want to mention that I tried these boots. Let me see where I have it. Yes, these ones, that when you are walking, you are leaving a shocking ground, and these shocks the enemy for 8 seconds. This is pretty good because it also applies the shocks twice from our ascendancy, but I feel that is too clunky because you have to be close to the boss. You have to be literally in melee range, and also since the boots don't have any movement speed, the gameplay is pretty low, especially in mapping. As you can see, this is my speed running with the boots, and once I start using the other ones, I move much faster, and this is much better. Okay, for a skill tree, mainly we want to boost our damage through increased modifiers. I have seen that there are a lot of increased modifiers in the tree, which will then multiply with the more and the amplifiers like shock. Then we are getting a lot of shock effect. That's why we're applying shocks that are double as good as the base shock. So we are getting shocks from 41% instead of 20%, and since we're applying 2 shocks from our ascendancy, that gets 4 times the value that we get from normal shocks. Okay. Then I'm getting some armor here. As I said, I want the build to be more tanky, and I want to have some sort of layered defenses against all sources of damage. That's why these nodes are very good for hybrid bases, because they both provide more armor and energy shield. Okay, and also some extra movement speed that is not bad. Then we have some arcane effect here, which will be boosting it through the Force of Will 2. Then we have exposure effects for high exposure and less elemental resistances. We have the chain for the arc. This is pretty good because it boosts all the damage in our clear. And then we have some more stuff for lighting here. Then my next steps are going to be to take this node for increased spell damage based on the mana. This will give us around, as you can see, 39 extra increased damage. And this is some more extra mana, and in the future we want to use inspiration on our arc, so it will cost less mana than what it costs now, so we can spend more. And after that, I'm not entirely sure, but there are a lot of stuff that's good that we can get. So for example, we have here the Ors effect, which we're pretty close here, and we have more block chance. As you can see, we can have 555, this is 15. Plus 12, this is 27 extra shield block. If we multiply 40, let's make the calculations here, 40 plus 1.27, we can get up to 50% block chance. So half of the hits that we get from bosses or from mobs while mapping will get blocked, and we will get 0 damage. Okay, this is why I'm valuing these kind of nodes a lot more. There's also more block chance here, but you kind of have to give some of your armor and your energy shield, because that's the global defenses, but in exchange you get a little bit more of damage thanks to the offensive stance. That's another option, but I like more going to down here, because also have more global defenses here in stun threshold. We'll see, we'll see. I don't have 100% decided yet, but I'm definitely taking these nodes and probably taking these two nodes because I'm already at 160 intelligence. So this is already like 30% increased damage, which is like 10% extra damage. Maybe some curse effect, which is pretty good too, to lower the enemy resistances even more. Okay, so now for the last part of the video, I wanted to show you how to buy items. In case you didn't play Pass of Exile 1, this could be a little bit complex the first time, but after you do your first trade, then the rest is just all the same. So for example, let's try to search now gloves that are similar to the ones that I showed you. So for example, we are going to enter to the Pass of Exile to trade, which is this side. And here we have an option to change the category of the item. So since we want gloves, we are going to search for gloves. Then we want gloves that are armor and energy shield bases. So we're adding they need to have at least one armor and one energy shield. Okay. The items cannot have armor, energy shield, and evasion, so we don't have to change anything in the evasion section. But we could. We have here, for example, the block one for the shield. And yeah, so we want to have the bases for the armor and shield, and here we have the stat filters. So we always want to have life because that's the main source for taking damage. So we will write maximum life, and we have here the explicit. You cannot click the other options because they are different. Okay, we want to have the explicit because we want to have the mod just in the item as a normal mod. Then we want to have the mana, okay, so maximum mana, again, as explicit. There are other options we want to have an explicit. And we can set some numbers. For example, I want to have 100 life and 100 mana. We search, and this will provide all the options that we have to search. For example, there are a lot of good options, as you can see, for one Exalt. This is very cheap. You probably have a lot of Exalts in your stashes. And then we have to check the other stuff, okay? So you have to check the rest, what you could have, or you can still filter in the items if they're cheap enough. As you can see, all of these are like a default price of one Exalt. So we can get more greedy and start adding more modifiers to filter, to improve the filter of the items. As you can see, we have already 144 matches. And we can have, for example, some resistance, which will come very handy for the build. Let's say fire, and we can the count one is in this category. I want to filter to have at least this amount of modifiers. So if the item has, if I select the minimum 2, and the item will have lightning call, calling fire, or lightning fire at least, so it won't show up in the search. We'll tell the site to search me only one rest, and we can select here 20 because we don't want to have 5 line rest, okay? And this is the new search 42. And as you can see, we have a high life, half mana, and one of the resistance. If you select 2 resistances, it just one for 45, okay? So this is how you search in the site. The next thing that I want to show you is how you know what are the mods that you can search from your gear. So for that, we're going to do the PoE to DB. This is all the data mined info from the game itself, so it is very unlikely to be wrong. So because it's just taken from the game files. So we're going to the modifiers section, modifiers, and here we're going to see all the items that you can search. In this case, we want for the gloves, and since we are doing the armor and evasion, that's strength and int. And these are all the modifiers that we can get from the this is new. These are all the modifiers that we can get from our mod pool. Okay, so these are the prefixes. We can have 3 of them. Which one will be life? The other will be mana, and the other one, it could be, for example, the hybrid from energy shield and armor. It's fine. Even the only energy shield is good too, or life too, of course. And then for the suffixes, we can have three items. Okay, rarity, I think is good too. For example, chaos res, any of the elemental resistances. Intelligence is also pretty good. And this is what you will add in the trade site. For example, reduce attribute requirements, which is pretty bad. but this is just an example. We can add here the reduce attributes requirements. This is increased because always is increased, but you have, for example, plus 20 here. And let's remove the mana. And these are the mods that we are going to start finding in these items, okay? This is how you search the items, this is how you know what the item can roll, so you can have a better experience in the while trading in Path of Exile. This is the same as it also works in PoE 1. And yeah, this is all for the video for today. I hope you're enjoying the build, or at least you have learned something new for new ideas for your own builds. See you guys in the next one. I will keep updating the build as I progress. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Bye.